following on from the previous two videos, I've got these two injectors. One of them was the green top and one of them was the black top. And there is actually another black top. So I've got one of them now. So there it is. That's the different black top. So there's only one green top. And this is the part number for that. If you can see that there. That's the part number for the green top one. That one has the tip, which is the L023 BPC. So that's in the green top for the 15p. And then you've got the other one, which I did last time, the 10p one. That's the part number for that one, if you can see that. And obviously that's a black top 10p one. And then the nozzle in that one was an L071 BPC. And that was for a 10p. And this is the other one, which I did already have actually in my pile. And it's slightly different than that 10p. And there's the part number for that one, if you can see it. And then this one is meant to be a 6-hole nozzle, and the part number for that one is meant to be L030 PBC. And I've been online and I've previously cross-referenced all three of the nozzles, and it does actually list that one as a 6-hole nozzle, but I can tell you it's not. Because I've had a look under the magnifying glass and it's definitely not. It's definitely only got 5 holes in it, which is the same for that. That's only got 5 holes in. It's only the 15p one that I could find that's got 6 holes in. So I'm going to dissect that one, but before I did, I measured this spring. And remember me saying there was like around a 1.5mm difference in the lengths of the springs from the 10p to the 15p. Well, this one happens to be the same size as the 15p green top. So I reckon the insides of this and that shaft is going to be the same length as this, whereas that one's slightly different. So I've got that to do. And then I've got 10p head set up there, got an injector in that. I'm going to work out the lift of that. And 15p head over there is an injector in that. I'm going to work out the lift of that as well with my dial gauge and everything. So I've just took it apart quickly. I've not totally stripped it yet. Just wanted to have a look at the nozzle part number, and it is an L030 PBC. There. So, it's unusual that they list these as a 6-hole nozzle, and it definitely isn't. It's definitely a 5-hole nozzle. I've got all measurements as well, which I'll tell you in a bit, but they're very similar to the other 10p, the sizing. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one that. So now I'll take the spring off and then measure the shaft and get all the other bits out and compare them all with the other two. So I've done a bit of measuring about the lift on the injectors. So that's a 15p setup. So it's got 15p injector in it. It's got 15p cam in it. And it's got the 15p rockers on it. So I did it with my veneers first, and then I've done it with my dial gauge. And I've measured both the 15p and then the 10p. That's got 10p cam in it. 10p injector. That's the one which was originally off this before I stripped it. So it's got the 10p injector in, 10p cam and 10p rocker shaft set up. And this is pretty much 9mm lift dead on. And that's perfectly at the correct angle. I've done a dial gauge, you know, dead horizontal to how the spring's compressed. So there's no angle, you know, fault in the measurement. So a 9mm lift on that. And on the 15p, it's 10mm. So there is 1mm difference, and that's pretty accurate, that, you know. So it does compress the injector 1mm more on the 15p. So yeah, surprised about that. So yeah, I'll move on to this injector now and measure all that up. So stripped all the new contender apart, and I've had a good measure up with my veneers like I did with the other two. And same as most of the components, well, all of them, they're pretty much identical on measurement wise. And then on this one, where I had this little section here, where on the other 10p one, it's got two little holes in it there. But on this one, it hasn't, the same as the 15p one hasn't as well. And also, I've had a measure up on the spring, and like I say, that one is not 1.5mm different like the other 10p one. It's actually identical to the green one. And also, the length of both shafts together is identical to the green one, where there's 1.5mm difference on the other 10p one. So yeah, I mean, like everything else is like the other 10p one, you know, like the little shoulder on the nose. But yeah, really the only difference is, like I say, the nozzles. So yeah, pretty much everything on this numbered, I'll give you the part number again there so you know the difference. On this one is identically measured to the 15p one. The green top one is a 6-hole, and the size of each hole is 0.16, and then the spray angle is 136 degrees, and that lives in the head at 9 degrees 30 minutes. So that's the angle that it's in the head. And then going on to the first 10p one, which is stripped down, and that's a 5-hole, and each hole is 0.19, and then that's got a spray angle of 145 degrees, that one, and that lives in the head at 8 degrees. Moving on to the other 10p one, the new contender. I think it is a 5-hole, and I do think they are 0.185 on that one. I think it's just like the internet has cottoned onto a 6-hole one for some reason. I don't know why. And that is a spray angle of 142 degrees. So it's similar to that one, really. And again, that lives in the head at 8 degrees, at an angle of 8 degrees, you know, in the cylinder head. So that's all the bump on that. So yeah, everything in that one, that 10p one, is pretty much the same as the 15p one, all measurement wise, the spring, the lengths, everything, apart from the nozzles. And then the only difference in this one is the slight difference in the spring length and the shaft length. So apparently that's the calibration shim, and this is, well, when it's built, this is the optimizer valve, and then you've got like the first stage and second stage, and then the plug which pushes against this little optimizer valve inside all them, and then you've got this, I think that's the first stage shim, and that's the second stage shim, and all that goes together inside that spring and presses against it, and then this section goes in the nozzle carrier and presses against the nozzle, and then all that lot goes inside that. So there's a lot going on, isn't there? So I presume what happens is it just compresses the fuel with the piston, and that's obviously happening inside here. And then you've got your little orifices there, which are controlled and released by your solenoid, which is there. So that just opens and shuts it. And then all this lot sort of pressurizes and forces the nozzle open, and then it does all the spraying. So they're pretty clever little systems, aren't they? Quite a lot going on. But if they say this is the calibration shim, I've measured all them and they're all the same. But I don't know. But apparently on some of them you can, when you modify them, you've got to shim them, haven't you? but I've not really delved that deep into it. I know the Americans are well into it, aren't they? I presume there'd be a limit as well, how far you can go on the nozzle sizing, you know, for what piston size you've got, because I think this is 7mm. So if you go too high on that, I bet you've got to up that as well, haven't you, to deliver more fuel. And also this new Contender 10p one, it compresses the same amount as what the 15p one does, whereas this other 10p one, that's around 1.5mm different. But you'd still be fine putting either of these 10p ones in a 15p head, because the 15p head, like I say, you've got 10mm compression off the rocker cam, and then you've got this which will allow for 12mm compression, so you'll still be all right, even though it's got that 1.5mm shorter. So it'll still be fine, like I say, as long as you adjust them up correctly, take up the slack and then back them off one full turn, 360 degrees anti-clockwise, you'd be fine. If you was to put a 15p green top in a 10p, because you've got that 1mm less compression, you might lose a little bit of power thinking about it. But if you put a 10p one, especially this one, in a 15p, I mean, this can still compress that 1mm more, no problem. And that's probably why you see a little bit of extra power, including the size of the nozzles, when you put a 10p one in a 15p, especially if you're running a 15p NNN ECU, because obviously that's going to drive the injectors more anyway with more fueling. I've got this solenoid. Obviously I've not had one of these apart, so I've ground round there just with my bench grinder. I'm just going to get it in vice and then take this cap off the end. Also, they're just like crimped, you know, like around to hold the cap on, and these solenoid cases are crimped on as well, so I might cut around that and take that off. But I'll put this in vice and just chip around it, see if it's been ground enough to release that cap out the end yet. Watch it spring out and go boing all over the place, right in the eyeball. With my luck. So. Something's going. There we go. Hey. Yeah, so it is just like an end cap, isn't it? And then we've got loads of stuff in there going on. So I'll see if I can get any of that out. That's just the cap turning. But yeah, it looks like just the solenoid pushes this centre plunger in and out bit, looks of it. So I might just have a grind round here, see if I can get the whole solenoid off. Keep going at that until it pops off, I think. So I took a bit of grinding, took loads off there, and it's just started changing colour. So I think we're close to getting in it. I'll get it in vice. Here we go. Dun dun dun. There's another O-ring in there. It's nice and sharp, isn't it? Slice. So yeah, there's that. Ooh, look at that. So this, we presume, would have the coil in it, with the coil around each one's internally in this, and the strong electromagnetic field. Let's have a look in here. Seems pretty solid, that. I'll have a little prod and a lever and that. See if I can get this bit apart. So I reckon this is spring loaded normally, this injector was faulty, it was stuck open. And I think this bit on the top, it's got a shaft going through onto this section here, and then there's a spring in there, I reckon, which holds it out, and then that top section on that solenoid bit, which is the electromagnet, attracts this and pulls it up to open it. That's what I'm thinking, and I think these are either little snap nuts or friction welded sections when they manufacture them to hold it together. So I might have to do a bit of drilling. I'm one of the size to take it apart, but I've just noticed when I've been just tapping it, it's freed it off a little bit, and then it hits like a solid bit, but it's springing back up now, like it's sort of freeing it off where it's been seized open. So I might have to drill a bit. Getting there though anyway. Yeah, it's definitely spring loaded, so I put it in the vise and just compressed it. Thought it might have like a snap nut or something, but I think, like I say, the only way is to drill this bit out of the top, and I've just got the vise holding it in so it doesn't go boing, but it probably will do anyway. So we'll do that. Something's going. There it goes. Hey. Yeah, it's spring loaded, isn't it? There it is. Look at that. Where are you? So yeah, that is spring loaded. So that's what seizes in them, isn't it? When the solenoid sticks. And obviously you've got that little thinner section on the shaft, which corresponds to them orifices, them holes there. And obviously it's open and shutting. And then, like I say, on the top, with this going up and down, it's just an electromagnet in it on this section, which goes on top, and don't have to move much to open and shut it. Just get my pliers on that. So yeah, that's all it is. That's just like steel, that. It's quite simple, really. There we go. Solenoids dissected as well. So like I say, this is an electromagnet. You can tell just by the way it is. Looks like a transformer, how that's made. You know, loads of plates, and they go inside, and then there's loads of coils of wire wrapped round it. But it's very high voltage, these, like I've had over 100 volts anyway. So I don't think there's any need for that, really. And then that's the casing, which was thicker than I thought. And then that section, which is spring loaded, that goes in that way. So that's spring loaded, and then opens and shuts them orifices. And this goes on this side, which is attracted by that to open and close it. So yeah, so, and then the rest of it, it's just the end cap and a few O-rings and that. So that is fully stripped now. So now you know. You probably did anyway, but I was curious. Because this one was actually stuck open, and that's why it was difficult to get it moving, because it was seized. So there you have it. You know all about them now, don't you? There we go, back together, good as new. Not. So yeah, like, I think that's the main problem with these when they go. That bit gets seized. So like, it sticks open and the spring hasn't got enough power to release it. So, I mean, unluckily, that's the dearest part of the injector, isn't it, the solenoid? So, there's no point unless you want to get one off like a second-hand one and put it on another injector, which I think would be fine. I think they're all interchangeable. They're all working the same voltage on the ECUs, whether it's a 15p or a 10p. So yeah, there you have it. Done and dusted. That's it now for injectors. So I've been messing about swapping the rocker shaft from a 10p to a 15p. And I found out that it didn't make any difference on how much it did compress the injector. So when I put the 10p one on the 15p head, it still compressed the injector by 10 millimeters, which is the same as the 15p rocker shaft setup. And then on the 10p, when I had the 10p one, it compressed them 9 millimeters. When I put the 15p rocker shaft on, it still compressed them 9 millimeters. So I discovered this has actually got a different cam in it. This has got a BMW cam in it off an early 10p, which is a different part number than the other two which I've tested. The other two are the more common ones, the 320 and the 310. So I'm measuring the lift now on the cam because I've got a feeling this early 10p one doesn't have quite as much lift. So I've got my dial gauge set up there. So I'm going to measure this one and then going to measure the other two cams as well. And I may as well do all the lift on all the valves as well, just to compare them all. That's the lift which is on the 15p 310 cam, and this is with the 320 cam in it. And this one is on the different 10p cam, which is actually a BMW cam, and it's in like the very early Defenders. It's a bit more tricky to do this one because I've got all the springs in as well for the valves. So I've done all the lift on all three cams, and I've written down, well, obviously I've done all the inlet and the exhaust, and then all the injector on all three cams, and then I've written down everything, and there you have it there. So we've got like the original cam in that 10p Defender of mine, which is a BMW cam. That's the part number. That's like a very early one, that. So like all the inlet and exhausts on all cams are pretty much the same. So all three cams, inlet, exhaust, they're all within, you know, like very small amounts of each other. So I'm convinced they're all the same. But yeah, on the BMW early 10p cam, and then the later cam which got released, which sort of replaced it when you couldn't get hold of that cam, which is the LGC 320. Well, you can't get that anymore now, and it's sort of superseded with the 310. But that just happens to have the same lift for the injector, pretty much, as the 10p one. So both 10p ones, they are minus 1 millimeter lift pretty much, because that one in the middle there, that's meant to be for a 15p, and apparently you can use that in all of them now. That's the only one you can get hold of, that LGC 310, and that does have 9.95 mil lift, whereas the other one has about 8.95 mil lift. So there you have it. So all the difference is on the cam, but they use them in the 10p's now anyway, because you can't get them. So even the rocker shaft assembly doesn't make a difference on the lift. and the heads don't make a difference on the lift, and the injector angle doesn't make a difference on the lift. It's all on that cam. So there you have it. So if they now use that cam in all of them, if you do replace it, obviously make sure you adjust your lash. You should do anyway, obviously. But if someone had a 10p setup and they was on one of the earlier cams and they didn't do the lash, when they fire it up, it could bottom out all the injectors and break all rockers or do some serious damage. But yeah, I'm going to use like a late cam in my build now, even though mine's a 10p, because I'll get that extra millimetre throw, so I can get a little bit of extra fueling out of the 10p injectors. So yeah, even if you measure the lobes, you know, like with the veneers, they're actually measuring the same size. And obviously I haven't found out until I put it in the head and did the lift with the dial gauge. But if you have a look, so you've got this one on the right, which is a 15p one, because you can tell with them grooves there, and the part number obviously. So if I just rest this piece of metal against the back edge of the lobe of the injector lifter, and then you compare it with the other lobes, there's hardly any gap there. Whereas if you do the same thing on the 10p one, you got quite a big gap there in comparison, and that is because obviously you're going to get less lift, whereas this one, it's more offset in it than that one. So yeah, you measure them all up, you still don't know. So yeah, they are different, but that is the only difference. The duration looks the same as well, you know, on the normal valves and on the actual injector lobes as well. I mean, obviously I've not measured it perfectly, but they look very, very similar. So yeah, that's the only difference. And as for the rockers and rocker shaft differences, so you've got like, they're both 10p ones then, and then this is a 15p one. So obviously you've got a physical difference in the design of the rockers, and these feel a bit lighter, these. So I'm thinking whether they just redesigned them just so there's not enough, you know, as much mass to move. But I don't know. But yeah, they've got a large section cut out there and then two raised ribs there, whereas these are solid on the 10p. I popped one off anyway to compare them. But looking at the shafts, everything's the same diameter. Everything lives in the same dimensions as each other from 10 to 15p. The only difference is you've got different oil drilling holes in the 15p. There's 3 there, whereas only 2 on the other one in that row. And then there's a singular one there and 2 there. There's that singular one. And you've only got 2 there and 2 there. So that's only a slight difference. But like I say, same length, same diameter. I've had both rockers swapped over and the circlips all clip up nicely. So they're interchangeable. And then I put 2 of the rockers on one shaft just to compare them, to keep them all synchronized together. And everything lines up, all lines up. I thought these might have been at a different angle from each other, but they're not. They're all the same. The rollers, they're the same diameter, the same width. Everything's at the same angles as each other. They're just a different design. Like if you put them on top of each other there, they look really different, don't they? But believe it or not, them rollers are exactly the same diameter and width. It's just the shape of the rocker itself on the 15p, which makes it look different. But it's not. But like if you look on that, it's got a bit more height on the front there. So whether that makes it a little bit stronger or not, I don't know. So actual rockers, they will interchange and they'll work the same. It's just one little tiny different on the height of the rollers, but it's hardly anything. You know, where they protrude on the 10p and the 15p. It's hardly anything, hardly anything at all. And then also you get, you know, the adjusters on the 10p. It's slightly longer, the threaded section to the ball, than the 15p. And the end of it just doesn't seem as much meat on the spherical bit on the top on the 15p's. But I have seen differences on a lot of them, you know, like even on the 10p's, some of them, they don't have quite as big a dome on the top as the others. So that might just be like, you know, a thing with just that little threaded part there. But yeah, so they're all interchangeable. So it is only the cam really that's different. Obviously there is differences, but it will work on either or. So that's my findings on them as well. And like I say, it looks like they've tried to make them lighter, and they are. You can tell they're lighter than the 10p ones. And obviously with that big curvature on the top, that'll probably make them a bit stronger as well. You know, if you look at the other one, it looks like it's the shape of it's going to make that bit more strength than that. Even though that's more solid on that area, it's not, is it? So that's it. That's all I can find. So thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.